What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Awesemo.com NBA strategy show presented by No House Advantage. I'm your host, Dave Loughran at Loughy_D on the social medias, LOUGHY_D. For those of you listening in podcast form, joined by Adam Scherer at Ship My Money DFS for an 8-game Wednesday slate. What's good, bro?
Excited to do another morning show with you. It's a nice change of pace from, being stuck here with Josh.
That's exactly what I want to hear. It's a fun slate. You got a lot of high-priced players on it, and we're going to dive into all of this. You got Jokic, Giannis, Embiid, Harden, SGA, Sabonis, Booker. I will say, though, just at first glance, and it's not something that, we put too much stock into, but I will throw it out there anyway. A lot of games that could just devolve into insane blowouts because some of the teams on this slate are not only bad, but bad and injured.
Yeah, and that's been a trend that we've seen recently anyway. Like, it's been pretty frustrating recently. At least, I don't know, maybe it's not more than it normally is, and it's just been like bad timing for me. But it seems like every game that I need to be competitive ends up being like 20 points in the fourth quarter recently.
It's funny you say that because I was putting together props for for my betting video today on the Odd Shopper channel. Check that out. A lot of great content. Matt Kajeski too, killing it with the college basketball stuff. And I was really trying to be a little bit more cognizant about it with teams like Denver, right? And OKC, obviously in that same game, Phoenix and Portland. I mean, that Portland team is lifeless. They're dead, man. They got nobody, and Justice Winslow's out. And then Houston on the second of a back-to-back against the Jazz team. Like, yeah, again, you and I always say it, blowouts can happen in a variety of ways. Players, your stars across three quarters can put up huge numbers, but there are definitely some elements of this slate that are a little bit scary. So
yeah, and to your point, I mean, recently, even the games where it's like, oh, this could get ugly in a hurry. You're talking like 9 and 10 point spreads. It looks like there's 4 games today with a 10+ point spread.
Yep. Yeah.
Including 14 on the Denver game and the Phoenix game.
Yeah. Yeah. Half of the games today.
Oh, and the Utah game.
That's what I got a 12.5, but still they're all the only one that's below, the only one in the double digits below 12 is the Sixers and Knicks. So yeah, dude, it's worth talking about, and we'll do that. But first, what's going on, everybody? Welcome. Happy to have you with us on this Wednesday morning. Hit that thumbs up if you haven't done so yet. Only takes a second. Just do it right when you jump in. Make it so, you can just ignore me when I say it because you've already done it. And subscribe to the channel. Help us get to, I don't know, Jordan Klein producing today's show. 100K, Jordan? We could get there, right? I don't think it'll be too long. We're at like 75,000 now. And if you want to join the channel, hit that join down below. You don't have to. It's all right. But if you want to join the team, get the free super chats each month, the custom emojis, the sweet badges, and always priority questions and comments that we'll answer and take care of along with our Discord members. You can do that as well. All right, man, we got 8 games. You want to dive into this?
Yeah, let's go.
Make it happen. Charlotte and Cleveland. And we did get updated ownership, totally free today. Everything for main slate ownership is free. PGA Top Golfers Tool is free. NHL ownership on the main slate also free. So if you want to follow along, we did get that update on ownership. We'll dive into it right now. We use this as a guide oftentimes during the show. The Charlotte Hornets on the road against Cleveland, 3-point dogs, 217 total. Definitely a pace down spot for them. Not really your favorite matchup, even if Cleveland isn't fully healthy. And that's reflected in the ownership, at least the early run that we've got.
Yeah, for sure. We have seen prices drop a little bit on Charlotte, LaMelo Ball in particular, down to $8,500. But the issue that you're going to run into there, you mentioned it, obviously, the matchup not being great. But again, you just have a lot of very, very good guards on this slate. You have Booker, you have SGA, you have De'Aaron Fox against New Orleans. Like there's plenty of good spots. You have Harden. There's plenty of good spots to get to. So it still just puts Ball in a situation where I think he's a perfectly fine play in tournaments. He's getting about 9% ownership. Makes sense to me. But I also think that, there is a high opportunity cost. We do have him going a little bit under-owned in the boom bust tool right now, projected for about a 12% chance of being in the optimal lineup on DraftKings. Same goes for Miles Bridges at 7,600. Someone that, assuming this game's competitive, is going to play a lot of minutes and, is around a fantasy point per minute guy. But I think it's difficult to really prioritize anything from this team in the sense of, getting large amounts of them across all of your lineups.
Yeah, I feel the same way. And with Cleveland, I wouldn't say now, first of all, we have to see what's going on with Cleveland first. Garland's questionable. He's been ramping up activities his day to day. I don't know if he plays. We know Rondo and Karis LeVert are out for at least a couple more games. So with that in mind, if Garland sits again, then, we're talking about Brandon Goodwin, even though his price is coming up. This guy's been pretty spectacular, Adam, getting huge minutes, a lot of facilitating opportunities, good enough usage, nothing crazy, but just combine all of that with the minutes and the solid enough peripherals. If Garland does sit, and I think it's very much a possibility, against Charlotte, we have to look at Goodwin again.
Yeah, for sure. I still think 6K with the number of minutes he's playing when Garland is out is doable. The one thing that I would caution, and obviously we can't really touch on it right now because we have Garland projected in, but do pay attention to his ownership. He was someone where, like the other night, I thought he was a very good play at 5,200 in the sense of he was underpriced, he was a good value, but that was another slate where you had a ton of really good guards. I ended up just sort of getting to the really good guards and being pretty underweight on a 40% on Goodwin. Obviously, it didn't work out, but that's kind of how I view this as well at 6K. Like, he's a good play, but if you're getting massive amounts of ownership going to him, there's plenty of other really good guards that I can get to. That put me in a situation where if Goodwin does just go get 30 DraftKings points or 32 DraftKings points, you're in a pretty good spot, if you've gone with some of the higher upside guards instead. So the ownership would definitely play a big role to me, even though it is a good spot and I think still a reasonable price tag.
For sure. Yeah. And who knows, Garland might play and wash all of that out. If he does play though, then, it thins out a lot. Of course you have Kevin Love. You talked about Kevin Love last show. We talked about Lauri Markkanen as well. I mean, he was just dreadful. Love ended up playing 26 minutes. The funny thing about these two guys, though, was not that Lauri Markkanen lost minutes to Kevin Love. He still played 35 minutes. He was just dreadful.
Yeah, he went back to being the Lauri Markkanen that we knew and loved in Chicago, where he just doesn't do anything. He had an 18.6% usage rate. By comparison, you had 30% for Love, 21 for Allen, 22 for Mobley. So they were both pretty much at their season averages. But yeah, the minutes are there. He still obviously has a path to success, and that path is a little bit easier if Garland is out since there is more usage available. But he's also 6,200. It's not like it's a safe play whatsoever. He's not a particularly good fantasy player. He's not particularly consistent, but the minutes should be there for him, and so there's a ceiling. But I think it's really tough to prioritize him. The Kevin Love piece, I ended up not having a lot of him last slate, obviously, because why would I play him when he does well? But it kind of just reiterates that his playing time is going to be inconsistent. He's averaged about 21 minutes per game in the games that Lauri Markkanen's been active. Well, in the games that Markkanen, Mobley, and Allen have all been active this season. But you see that playing time fluctuate where, he can get 26 minutes and another game he can play 16. I do think that his playing time is probably a little bit... It's a little bit safer, I guess, if Garland is out. But again, I mean, it's not that much safer. We're talking about 2 and 3 games ago where he played 14 and 16 minutes.
Is there anybody that you want to prioritize for Cleveland? And let me point out too, I get, yes, someone said Goodwin 6K, yikes. No doubt. But this is one of the better matchups in the league. Charlotte plays at the second fastest pace. They're, a bottom 7 defense. So it's definitely a considerable pace up spot for Cleveland, which is why I'm asking you about the rest of this team as well. Yeah.
And I mean, as far as the Goodwin price, I get that there is some sticker shock. You look at it and it's like, oh, Brandon Goodwin shouldn't be 6K, but he started 5 games now this year. He's averaged 31.6 minutes per game, but in the recent games, we've seen him, get up around 36, and he's averaged 0.93 DraftKings points per minute. So if you just take, say he's playing 35, 36 minutes, 0.93 fantasy points per minute, 6K is pretty much correct. And then you factor in the good price, or the good matchup rather, against Charlotte. So I get that there's some sticker shock, but you really have to think about, how many minutes he's going to play if Garland is out. As far as the rest of the guys,
real quick, not to mention that Rondo's also out. So
right.
You really don't have any legitimate backup point guards on this team if Garland sits either.
Right, which is why you're getting the 36 minutes instead of
Exactly.
32.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it's still, I think, the math, basic back of the napkin projections bear out that price tag. As far as the rest of the team, though, I think they're mostly like correctly priced. So, guys like Mobley, Love, Markkinen are all fine. The one that probably stands out to me the most, though, is Jared Allen at 7,400. The issue, of course, is that he's a center and there's always a high opportunity cost there. But this is a really, really favorable matchup for him. A lot of rebounding opportunities, weak Charlotte front court, good shot blocker, all of that. So I do like Jared Allen quite a bit at 7,400.
Let's talk about the Pacers and the Orlando Magic. We saw Brogdon play a couple and then sit on the second of a back-to-back. He's not on the injury report today. So obviously that's going to tamp down the value on pretty much everybody else on this team, be it Halliburton, Buddy Hield, doesn't really matter who it is. This now becomes a far more difficult team to try and sift through, right? When Brogdon's in there and we assume that he's going to play another 30 minutes.
Yeah. So he's played 2 games now with Halliburton, about a 22% usage rate, 20% assist percentage. He's averaged 30.1 minutes per game. He hasn't played in the fourth quarter in either of those games, though. One, it seemed like maybe was by design. The other one was a blowout. It wouldn't surprise me if you got a couple of extra minutes here. I don't think you should necessarily be like projecting 32 to 34, but I'm not convinced that it's not in his range of outcomes. I think 30 31 is a pretty fair projection for him. At 7,100, it's not a bad price tag. Obviously, it's a good matchup against Orlando, likely to be a high scoring game. He's still averaged about 1.1 DraftKings points per minute in these couple of games. So I think Brogdon may be a little bit underpriced when you factor in that he could certainly play a few more minutes than his median projection suggests. On the other hand, with Halliburton and Hield, they still have upside just because they're playing a lot of minutes. Halliburton is very good.
And they're playing the Magic.
Yeah, and they're playing the Magic. So there's still upside. The issue that you run into, I think, is that they're certainly priced for Brogdon not to be out there. And, obviously if Brogdon is out there, he's cutting into them at least somewhat and making them at least a little bit overpriced.
Right. I feel the same way. I mean, Halliburton's price is up there. And don't get me wrong, he's played well since coming to Indy. So has Buddy Hield. But most of those games have been without Malcolm Brogdon. So it just gets difficult. And we saw that just a couple games ago, right? Where this team, what was it, a win over Boston? Yeah, win over Boston with Brogdon out there. You had 4 guys in the starting lineup with 20 plus points. I'm not saying that's going to be commonplace every night, but it wouldn't be shocking to see, spread around usage. And if that's the case, I think you'll pretty quickly see Halliburton and Hield's price points come back down to a much more palatable spot. So
yeah, agreed. And also, it's not necessarily a huge deal, but do pay attention to Chris Duarte and Lance Stevenson's status. If they're both out, you're talking about opening up more bench minutes where maybe Jalen Smith gets to like 26 minutes off the bench. Granted, he's up to 5,300, so it's not. It would still be risky, but there is the potential for kind of some like sneaky minutes for guys if Duarte and Stevenson are out.
For sure. Anthony, we talked about that with Dwight Howard. That there's on the deeper dive that there's a real possibility he just doesn't start that game, and he didn't. Man, they made a comeback too. Luka wasn't on it yesterday. That was the problem. But
yeah, I'd already gone to bed. My night was done long. My night was done pretty much around the time LeBron had 10 points halfway through the second quarter.
Yeah, that wasn't looking good. I had a 5-leg parlay. And I was 4 of 4 thus far, and I just needed Luka over 31.5 points. He had 12 after the first. I'm like, okay, we're pacing this nicely. And then it's late. I picked my phone up. I'm trying to sleep, but I was like, let me check. After halftime, they were up by a lot. And then the Lakers went on a 13-1 run to start the second half, and Luka just nothing ever materialized there, but whatever. Anyway, Orlando Magic. Wendell Carter Jr. has been awesome lately. Cole Anthony is probable in this one. He's got a Q tag, but he's probable. So there's no real reason to worry about any type of injury concerns here. Markelle Fultz returned for the first time this season, played 16 minutes. Do we want to get to any Orlando Magic players like a Carter Jr. or take that shot on Mo Bamba despite the insane volatility there?
I mean, I'm always open to taking shots on Bamba just because of that volatility. Obviously, not someone that you're very confident in his floor, but if he gives you, I mean, he played 30 minutes last game. If he gives you even 26, he's likely to be fine at 4,700 or 4,900. he's certainly capable of going for, massive games at that price tag, even though it's not going to happen all that often. So I don't mind getting there. Wendell Carter Jr. still looks pretty good to me as well. He only played about 28 minutes last game, but lost like 3.5 minutes at the end to garbage time, was still, pacing 30 to 32 minutes. So I like that. Anthony and Suggs are both fine, but I do expect, Anthony to be playing around 30 minutes now, Suggs to be around 28. So maybe a little bit more expensive than I would like. I think the front court's where I'm most interested.
And if Fultz's minutes continue to rise, even like 4 a game, it's just not going to help them either. So yeah, you're projecting, would you say 30 and 28 for Cole and Suggs respectively?
Yeah.
Yeah, that doesn't help, especially being on this team until the prices come back down a little bit. Is there anyone else for Orlando, or do you want to move on to the Knicks and Philly?
No, I think that's it for Orlando. Fultz looked pretty good last game, but I mean, until he's off a minutes restriction, I don't think you can be really paying 4,700 for him.
Yeah, they said he would play 15 to 20, so I think that's still in his range. Like if he played 20 today, it wouldn't be shocking.
Yeah, but like even if he plays 20, it's pretty tough for him to
get
where you want to be.
For sure. That's what I'm saying.
What's going to happen is his price tag is going to get down to 4K the same day that they ramp up his minutes.
What's it at now?
4,700.
Oh yeah, that's way too much.
Yeah, and he came in at like 5K. So it's going to be the thing where the price tag just keeps dropping because of his playing time. And the Magic are like, oh, we're playing him 26 minutes tonight. And he's like $4,000.
Yeah. What does this team look like when he gets back to his normal minutes?
I don't know. I assume they kind of just like pay Terrence Ross to go hang out at the end of the bench, take minutes away from Gary Harris.
I guess so.
I mean, there's no way this team should be taking minutes from any of Suggs, Franz Wagner, or Cole Anthony, or really, I mean, not that they're the same position, but Wendell Carter, or probably Bamba. Like Ross and Harris do not matter to this team.
For sure. I mean, but do you start like? Do you just keep Fultz as you put him as your 6th man?
I think he's the 6th man.
Okay. I think he could be for sure. They've got some young talent though, but yeah, you can't, I mean, you could just knock back Gary Harris minutes considerably too.
Right. Yeah. There's no, like as bad as Orlando is, they actually have a lot of pieces on this team that conceivably could be on their next good team. Gary Harris and Terrence Ross are not 2 of those guys. Yeah.
And at least guys that you'd want to showcase as young players if you're looking to make some moves in the future as well. The Knicks, 10.5 point dogs to the Sixers, 224.5 point total at the Wells Fargo Center. Dude, I tell you what, there's nothing worse than Alec Burks. Alec Burks, sorry. I was fortunate enough to dodge that landmine on Sunday. This isn't a personal thing, right? Like it's not a narrative driven thing or I don't play that guy, but whenever Alec Burks is mega chalk, it's just one of those spots where as a guy that relies so heavily on scoring and can disappear so often, it's easy to get away from him, but that's not the case today. 8-game slate. He's getting around 13%. Of course, you have no Derrick Rose. You have no Kemba Walker. A bunch of guys, even Quentin Grimes is another one who's out. So you would expect Alec Burks to continue to get those minutes, but hey, Evan Fournier was the guy last game. RJ Barrett is going to get a lot of usage. Julius Randle is obviously one of the top usage guys on this team. It's not just like Burks slips into the starting lineup and rips off 20 shots per game ever.
Yeah, exactly. In the games that he has started this year with RJ Barrett and with Julius Randle both active, he has started 17 games. He's averaged 33.7 minutes per game. So that's good. 16.8% usage rate, 14.1% assist percentage. He's just someone that if you're playing him, it's for the minutes he's out there and you're just hoping he runs into some stats because he's not a high usage guy. He's not getting a lot of peripherals. He's averaged about 0.8 fantasy points per minute in those games. So the playing time is nice. It makes him look decent at the salary. But to your point earlier, as far as, like when he's popular, in general, guys like that, when they're popular, are the easiest to get away from because you're not saying like, oh, I need this guy that's going to shoot 25 times to have a bad game, or this guy that's going to that typically is going to get like 10 assists to have a bad game. You're just saying I need this guy that typically just runs around the floor and doesn't do anything to run around the floor and not do anything.
Exactly, and that's what he did last game. So it's also, to be fair, a lot different when Alec Burks is like 4,200, right? Because we were getting him there earlier in the season, much cheaper, but that's not the case. I do want to ask you about Barrett, though, not because he's exciting at this price point, but because Barrett has had that really nice ceiling this year. And if the Knicks are going to keep this game close, I think you'll see him, have to convert on a lot of these. His usage has been high. He's playing huge minutes in regulation. Barrett's always one of those guys I'm curious to get your analysis on, especially, as a dog here, but more so the fact that he's a mid-range player that doesn't have the highest floor, but is someone that can go out and rip off 25 shots and play 40 minutes in 4 quarters.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing not to like is that his salary has gotten up to 7,500 on DraftKings, so he's starting to be priced more for, or like a little bit closer to his ceiling than his median. There is still, obviously a high ceiling. He just scored 60 plus fantasy points against Miami a couple of nights ago. In the minutes he's played this year without either one of Kemba or Rose on the floor, he's played a total of 981 minutes. He has a 28.8% usage rate, which is the highest on the team in those minutes. He's averaged about 1 DraftKings point per minute. And like you said, he's likely to play a ton of minutes. If this game's competitive, you're probably getting around 38 minutes from Barrett. So there is upside for him, and he has point guard, small forward eligibility. The issue is just that I think you're starting to see that salary kind of skew a little high.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with that either. It's just, it's an interesting spot to look at with somebody like Barrett, because he does have his usage rate over the last 5 games is 31%. Pretty high.
Yes, he's not afraid to shoot. He's being very aggressive, especially recently, but overall this year too.
And I like players that are willing to try and get to the rack as well. Not as easy against Joel Embiid, but do you like anything from the Knicks though?
Kind of interested in Randall at 9,400. Just a good fantasy producer. He's averaged about 1.2 DraftKings points per minute without Kemba or Rose on the floor this year. Likely to give you, 37, 38 minutes. I think the price tag's pretty fair, but I think it looks decent.
Okay. How about with the Sixers? The James Harden experiment through 2 games looks okay. He has a 61% assist rate in those 2 games. I'll tell you, it's weird. It's a weird spot because Tobias Harris is just eating shit, metaphorically speaking, of course, with Harden out there. Harris has played 64 minutes, Adam. 63 have come with Harden on the floor. So, I mean, that's just, it should be good for him.
Do you know what his usage rate is in those 2 games?
I'm going to say 12%, 13%.
StatMuse has it at 14.9.
Okay, so I was close.
Yeah.
It's not high. Well, Maxi's been so good too. That's the thing. Maxi's usage, I think, is around like 20. I think Harden's around 22. I think Embiid's still at like 39 or something.
Yeah. 21 for Maxi, 23 for Harden, 37 and change for Embiid.
Right. Depending on where usage.
Yeah, depending on where you look. Yeah.
Yeah.
The big difference for Embiid has been the drop off in assist percentage, which isn't surprising at all.
We talked about that before the first game, that's a real issue.
Yep.
Go ahead. I mean, I'm happy to hear you break this one down.
Oh, I mean, I think it's, from a fantasy standpoint, I think it's a really difficult team to like much of because prices haven't really adjusted to Harden being there. So you have Embiid at 11.6, still a good play, a high upside option, pace down spot against, or just slow spot in general against the Knicks. But with the assist percentage coming down, like you and I talked about before, Embiid still very clearly has a ceiling if he's going to have a usage rate, still approaching 40%. The issue is that his current price tag is also factoring in like a 26% assist percentage that he had before Harden came. So yeah, it does make him a little bit riskier, but there's still that massive upside. For Harden, kind of the same thing. Massive assist percentage, but I assume it's going to come down at least somewhat. Usage rate probably does hold around 24%, somewhere in there. That's what we had seen in Brooklyn when he was playing with Durant and Kyrie as well. So I think that he's likely to have some big games, but you've also gotten his price tag up to 11,200. So I think it's pretty difficult to prioritize that. It looks more like, a high upside tournament play here and there, but pretty difficult to prioritize. And then when you look at Harris and Maxi's price tags, I think it's pretty difficult to get to either of them at $7K for Harris, 6,600 for Maxi, based off what we've seen so far.
Maxi's going to turn into like a budget Devin Booker. Let me explain, right? Maxey had some ball handling responsibilities before. Obviously he's not as good a player by any stretch, not as good a shooter, but he has actually been shooting, better. He's 40% 3-point shooter. As a matter of fact, that's actually higher than I thought. But what I'm saying, Adam, is when you've got a Chris Paul on the floor and then you have Devin Booker's big games almost always come from big scoring games. And I think you're going to have to rely on that, of course, albeit at a lower price, right? And not as talented a player with Maxey, where when Maxey has those big games, and he's had 240 DraftKings point games since Harden's come along, but both of those are largely, if you were to take out the steals, the 6 steals, are largely because Harden's just passing him open on every single opportunity. But the assists are going to take a huge hit for Maxey as well.
Yeah, exactly. I kind of just view this team as like there's obviously upside in tournaments. Embiid and Harden are both still really, really good and both obviously very involved in different ways. Harris and Maxey, if they're knocking down shots, are going to play enough minutes to have good games. But right now on DraftKings, we have like 12% ownership going to Embiid, Harden at 3%, Harris and Maxey at 1%. Like you could argue those are probably a little bit low, but I think it kind of tells the story of like these price tags and these players are going to be really difficult to prioritize on this slate.
I mostly agree, but I think 2.9% on Harden is still too low.
I agree with that, but I think it's going to be difficult to say like, oh yeah, I'm taking a huge stand where I play a lot of James Harden today.
I get that, but what I'm saying is I don't know if anyone really knows how to project him right yet. And if that's the case, Harden might just end up balling. 39 minutes last game in regulation is huge. That's more than most of these Sixers play. It's more than Joel Embiid plays. He's getting minutes with Embiid off the floor. I think of the 74 minutes he's played, like 51 of them have come with Embiid. So that's still a decent chunk per game without Joe. 24 potential assists per game in these spots. There's a lot to like about James Harden at 3%. I'm with you in that you don't need to take a stand on him, and he is shooting really well in these 2 games. But would it be shocking if one of the best scorers in the history of basketball continues to score well, especially when you have a Joel Embiid out there and you have other guys that can score? So I think 3% is pretty low.
Yeah, I agree with that.
All right. Anything else?
Nope.
Let's talk about Utah and the Houston Rockets. Here's another huge spread, 12.5 points, 231 point total. Rockets, if you watched our video yesterday, we were laying the 7 on the Clippers just because this Rockets team against a decent defense, man, they're already bad, but this is just bad, right? They're 12.5 point dogs, second of a back-to-back. This could be a bludgeoning tonight in Houston, Adam.
Yeah, really, really tough spot to get to unless they just sit multiple people. I assume Kevin Porter Jr. is questionable, but like we talked about yesterday, he doesn't really make that much of a difference outside of impacting Dennis Schroeder, who is probably going to play a good amount if they are competitive and if Porter is out. But there's just not a whole lot to like here. The price tags aren't really appealing. The matchup sucks. The team sucks. They don't play a particularly condensed rotation when everyone is in. So I don't have like a single guy that I can really point to on Houston and say that I like.
What about on Utah?
Probably the whole team. Yeah,
okay.
It's kind of back to what we've seen previously from Utah. Donovan Mitchell at 8,800, I think looks fantastic. Should play 33, 34 minutes if this game's competitive. If it's not, there's a pretty good chance he did a lot of the scoring. One thing to keep in mind that I don't even know how actionable this is. Maybe, you take like a minute off of Mitchell's projection, but we do typically see Quinn Snyder let his main guys play through blowouts at home. He's not as quick to do that typically on the road. So kind of a minor point that makes Utah look a little bit worse, I guess. But Mitchell still in a really, really good spot, should do well. Same for Rudy Gobert, who's down to $7,800. He should just destroy this Houston front court. So those 2 look like the top 2 to me. But then, a $6,100 Conley, a $5,600 Bogdanovich, $5,100 Clarkson. Any of those guys certainly have paths to success as well.
Top play from this game?
Gobert.
Okay. Hey, No House Advantage, sponsor of the Strategy Show. Have you checked it out yet? Because if you do, or if you haven't, you get a $25 deposit bonus with the promo code Awesemo. They are bringing you an entirely different way to enjoy DFS with player prop contests, right? And the best thing about this really isn't just that you can get $25 when you sign up with the promo code Awesemo, but we have the No House Advantage projections at awesemo.com for free every day of the week. We have the optimal lineup tool free every day of the week. We have the player prop tool. We have oddshopper.com, which is free. All of that stuff that's going to put you at a significant advantage. And unlike a lot of these other player prop sites, the props are static over at No House Advantage, right? They don't move throughout the day. And you might say, okay, well, how does that help me when, I'm playing against the field and it's peer-to-peer and they can all make the same decision? Well, you've seen the decisions people make. You've seen Adam and myself do these shows long enough to know that there are plenty of people out there that will easily miss some very, very easy decisions to make. It's all worth taking advantage of, especially when you have all of our free tools at your disposal. All you're doing is building lineups, right? You're building lineups with player props, no salary. So you're taking the props, the over or the under, no juice on either side. The ones you like the most go at the top. The ones you are then get the most points. Conversely, the ones at the bottom, you're least confident in at the bottom of your lineup, but they get the fewest points. Very fun format. $25 deposit bonus when you sign up. AWESEMO. Awesemo is the promo code. Check it out today. Beat your friends, not the house. Download it in the App Store or the Google Play Store. Go to nohouseadvantage.com, however you want to do it, but be sure to use all the free tools at Awesemo as well. All right, let's talk about Miami and Milwaukee. Here's a fun one. Miami Heat, very good basketball team. Oftentimes, when healthy, not the greatest DFS team, but Gabe Vincent, Adam, is going to get a little bit of love today with Kyle Lowry once again sidelined.
Yeah, as he should. Price tag increased a little bit, but not too much. Still coming in at 4,200. I think pretty clearly looking like one of the better values, assuming he remains in the starting lineup. You're likely to get 32 plus minutes from Vincent. He's not a great point per minute guy, but even at 0.75 or so fantasy points per minute, if he gets 32 to 34 minutes, he's going to look like a pretty good value and open up a lot of other stuff for you.
Okay, so I was just reading one of your comments.
Yeah.
I wanted to see what you were responding to first. Butler, Hero, Tucker, Bam. I mean, I guess on one hand, this matchup might not look particularly fantasy friendly, but it should be a competitive game, which you might not get a ton of today. 227 total really isn't that bad. The biggest question from me to you is when you look at a guy like Butler at his price point, how do you prioritize, or do you not prioritize somebody like that when he's amongst so many other great players in that 9K and up range?
Yeah, I think it just in general makes it difficult to prioritize any of them in the sense of getting massive amounts into your lineup. Right now we have Butler projected for about 12% ownership. Makes sense to me. I think the $9,200 price tag is fair, but like you said, there's so many good plays in that price range. Typically, you're kind of making a mistake. If you're playing a lot of lineups, at least, you're typically kind of making a mistake if you just point to one guy in a group of 5 very similar guys and say, this is the one that I'm playing in all of my lineups. Because there's going to be better spots usually that you can take a stand on. And that's how I see this slate going as well. Right now, we have a 9% chance of Butler being in the optimal 12% projected ownership. So, pretty much just getting the ownership he deserves. He does get a bump in assist percentage without without Kyle Lowry. He is likely to play 35 or 36 minutes if this game's competitive. So he looks good, just not really drastically different than anyone else in his price range. And I think that's kind of the case for Adebayo at 8,700 as well. He's always a high upside option, but even just talking about the center position so far, he's $1,300 more than Jared Allen against Charlotte. He's more expensive than Gobert against Houston. That's not to mention, Embiid obviously at the top, Mo Bamba at the bottom of the pricing range. It's just, as usual, a deep center slate. You have Jokic that we haven't talked about yet either. So it's tough to prioritize him. Tyler Hero should get 32 to 34 minutes if this game's competitive. He's at a pretty favorable price tag at 6,500. The one thing you have to keep in mind with him, though, is that you do have Butler and Adebayo active. So while Lowry's absence likely means a couple of extra minutes for Hero, it's not the most productive minutes because you're getting a little bit of a drop in usage when he plays alongside Jimmy Butler.
It's kind of wild to think, Giannis on any slate is only getting 8% ownership. But look, it's not a excuse me, it's not a good matchup. It's a pace down spot. Miami, one of the slowest teams in the league. Giannis in 2 games against them this season. It's only it's a 2-game sample against this team. It doesn't mean much, but has really struggled. I got to tell you, at 12-2, man, I don't really. I rarely do I say this, but I don't really like Giannis all that much. I'm not saying he can't come out and have a big game, but I just think there are so many alternatives. Not just Jokic is your only alternative, but I think there are plenty of others at a cheaper price point that are in just markedly better spots. Do you think I'm wrong here?
No, I mean, I think that Giannis is always a good play pretty much, but I agree with you that you have a really strong, 9K range or upper mid range, I guess. You have Jokic. You just have a lot of guys where you don't necessarily have to go all the way up to Giannis. And if you are going up to that price point, you have Jokic. But on the other hand, Giannis is up there with Jokic as far as best point per minute guys in the NBA. The matchup's not great, but in some ways, and you kind of mentioned this earlier, in some ways, the matchup is good just because like this game's relatively unlikely to blow out compared to other games. So, maybe you actually get a situation where Giannis is the one playing 36 minutes and several of the other guys that people pay for are playing less minutes than Giannis, which is pretty unusual. So, you do have that kind of working in his favor, even though Miami is a good team defensively. So I think Giannis looks very good. I think it's fair to say that maybe a little bit more of a luxury right now.
Fair point, though. Yeah, if all of those games do get blown out and are just washed out by the fourth quarter, maybe it is Giannis. But he's going to need 4 quarters in this one is what I would assume. Do you like anyone from Milwaukee? Usually when we don't like Giannis and he's active, we don't have a ton of interest in the rest of the Milwaukee Bucks.
Yeah, I mean, Giannis is still my top guy from this team. And it's kind of the same analysis as always. Holiday, Middleton, Portis, I don't have an issue getting to any of those guys. I think they are pretty much correctly priced, whereas I think Giannis is a little bit underpriced relative to his projection. But, again, you also have to factor in what you're taking away elsewhere in your lineup when you pay that price.
All right, 5 down, 3 to go. Hit that thumbs up too if you haven't done so yet. Well, we're over 100. Nice. Over $1, almost 500 people watching. Appreciate you all. I thought I wanted to say something else. I can't remember what it was, but unimportant. Oh, I already told you. NBA ownership projections are free. Top golfers for PGA is free. Main slate ownership's free. You don't even need an account. But if you want to sign up, do it for a week, a month, a year, one sport, all sport. Doesn't matter. However you want to do it, awesemo.com/join. We have the top stack tool, the boom bust tool, the lineup builder, the everything. Ownership, player projections across the board for every sport out there. If they have contests for them on all of these sites, we have content, all the tools built by Awesemo, Alex Baker himself. So they're good. They're legitimate. And well, you can do it for however much time you want, whatever your budget, whatever your style of play. If you want to do all sports for a year, make a legitimate investment out of it, you can do that. Or you can try out one sport express pass for less than $5 a week. However you want to play at awesemo.com/join. And hit me up on Twitter if you have any questions about it. My DMs are open. I don't mind answering your questions. All right, Sacramento, not New Orleans. I said this to you before the show, right? This game, nice little total here. 234. I think it's actually come up since the last time I looked at it. I think it was 234 earlier this morning. Now it's at 235.5. So it's climbing. I mentioned to you that as I was researching some of these props, the Sabonis 35.5 prop with no real juice on the over seemed low to me just because of how involved he's been. He's gone over that mark in 4 straight games. But just the fact that from an assist perspective, a rebound perspective, a usage standpoint, and a minute standpoint when he's out of foul trouble is huge right now.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's a pretty favorable matchup. Should be a high scoring game. He's obviously been extremely involved since coming over to Sacramento. He's in the games he's played with the Kings, 7 games with De'Aaron Fox active, 24.4% usage rate, 23% rebounding percentage, 28.5% assist percentage, 32.9 minutes per game. And keep in mind, the minutes per game number is probably skewed a little bit lower than he'll end up at just because of foul trouble and blowouts over a relatively limited sample. So I think that Sabonis looks great. As far as the prop goes, if I give him 34 minutes, I get him to like 37.5. So I'm with you as far as thinking that that's low as well. And he certainly could play more minutes than that too.
What do we have him projected at?
I have him at like 37.5.
I'm sorry, ownership.
Oh,
4.7% on DraftKings.
that seems it seems low. I guess really low might be stretching it because he is center only. And again, you just
Yeah.
have a ton of centers. But yeah, I mean, 4% for Sabonis is very appealing when you're talking about somebody that can pretty easily go for 55, 60.
Yeah, and let me actually mention a point, just relate a point that you made earlier with Giannis to this. Like if you're talking about high price guys, this game, 6-point spread, nothing crazy, 235.5 total. This is another one that you could legitimately see staying close.
Sure.
So,
Yeah, I mean, the only knock on Sabonis really is that with him being center only, like we have Joval, like Joval's on the other side of this game too, and we hadn't even mentioned him. So
I know
it's just like almost every team on the slate has a good center.
was Sabonis? I swear he was power forward eligible last. Maybe not.
It was
maybe
two games ago. I think
2 games ago. Okay, Trey Lyles, dude, 31 minutes. We got that late news that he was starting over, I think, Mo Harkless, right?
Harkless, yeah, and then Harkless DNP'd.
Yeah, Harkless DMP CD'd, and Trey Lyles came out balling, dude. I don't want to assume that he's going to shoot 10 for 14 again, but 31 minutes in that game against OKC.
It makes him look like probably the best value we have right now. I didn't really know what to do with him in that game because, it was like, okay, well, Mo Harkless has been playing like 14 minutes. Is Trey Lyles going to play 20 minutes and Harkless is going to stay in the rotation and play 12 or, something like that? Or are we just going to get Harkless out of the rotation? We got Harkless out of the rotation. The Kings won. Lyles played well. It seems it would be weird if he's not starting this game. And it's not like he's a bad fantasy producer. This year between Detroit and Sacramento, in 56 games, he's averaged 1.02 DraftKings points per minute. You have a favorable matchup against the Pels. He doesn't need to play anywhere close to 30 minutes to be a good play at 3,300 with power forward eligibility.
Right. We were playing Lyles, projecting him at like 22 minutes when he was this price.
Right. Yeah. If I give him 22 minutes, he has like a 7x projection.
It's crazy.
He should be the highest owned player on the slate, at least the way things are right now.
What a weird rotation last game. He played. Did you see his like the first half and then second half rotation for him? Take a look.
Yeah, he didn't close the first half.
No, but he played 6 minutes in the first quarter in his first stint, returned a couple minutes later, and then played through that into the second quarter, another 6 minutes. And then he came back and closed out like 20 seconds of the first half. But I'm just saying that first and second half rotation were way different. He played 11 minutes to close out the fourth quarter.
Yeah, definitely just a weird rotation, like 12 to 13 minutes in the first half and then finished at 30. It was weird. And I don't necessarily think he plays 30 to 31, but also can play like 2/3 of that, and I would still be playing him a lot.
Yeah, it's odd, especially because Sabonis was in foul trouble and didn't play for the last 9 minutes of the first half. But I don't know.
Jones was the one coming in for Sabonis.
Say it again.
Damian Jones was the one coming in for Sabonis.
I know. I just thought that you might have seen Lyles move over to center for a couple of minutes if he's going to be playing that many minutes.
Yeah,
but that wasn't the case because, like you said, Harkless DMP'd anyway, so it didn't matter. But anyway, Lyles, phenomenal play. I do like Sabonis. Where are you at on De'Aaron Fox and anybody else from the Kings?
I think the price tag on De'Aaron Fox is a little too cheap. 8,100 for someone that's likely to play around 36 minutes is, just a pretty cheap price tag. Fox has averaged 1.15 DraftKings points per minute in the games he's played with Sabonis this year. Has a 29% usage rate and a 27% assist percentage. So that's really good to see. You haven't seen him take a hit there. So I think Fox looks very good. I would say him and Lyles, like they're projected for the most ownership here. I really think given their positions / price tags, that should be the case. Obviously, I really like Sabonis a lot as well, but I think it would be just wrong to expect him to be, or to say he should be more popular than Fox or Lyles. Beyond them, obviously you can take some shots at Barnes as the last guy in, but what I'm actually interested in tournaments, and you and I talked about it the other day, is the grouping of DiVincenzo, Lamb, Mitchell, and to a lesser extent, Justin Holiday. Like Justin Holiday, you can expect on average to play the most minutes out of that group, but He's also not a good fantasy producer. But the DiVincenzo, Lamb, Mitchell pieces, like you've seen Lamb play 30 minutes, you've seen him play 18. You've seen Mitchell play 30 minutes, you've seen him play 12. DiVincenzo seems to just like be living in the 20 to 22 minute range. But they're all cheap enough where if any of them get that 26 to 30 minute game, they're going to be a very good play. It's not going to happen all that often, but they're also not going to have any ownership. So in lineups where you need to save ownership and you need a value piece, I don't mind taking a shot at somebody like Lamb or Davion Mitchell.
Okay.
Or DiVincenzo.
Yeah, you're spinning the wheel, really. You're just
yeah. You're not like nobody should. If one of them does well, nobody should come in tomorrow and be like, "Oh, Adam said Davion Mitchell is gonna have a big game." Like he probably isn't. There's no way you can look at this and say like, "Oh, this is the Davion Mitchell game or the Jeremy Lamb game or the DiVincenzo game." The point is that for those guys collectively, there's a lot of minutes available. And if one of them is playing well, he's getting more of those minutes.
The point is you can look back on any of these games and go, oh, I see why that was a Davion Mitchell game or why that was a Jeremy Lamb game. Yeah.
Right.
All right. How about New Orleans? You said we didn't talk about Joval yet. Like you said, another good center option today. CJ McCollum's price continues to rise. Brandon Ingram's is down below 8K, but this is, I mean, really that's the big three for this team right now is Ingram, McCollum, and Joval. And then there's just everybody else. Yeah,
pretty much. It's obviously a good matchup. So I like getting to New Orleans quite a bit. Joval's in a very good spot. Should do very, very well here. Likely to play around 30 to 32 minutes if this game's competitive. Reasonable price tag at 8K. McCollum's been great since coming over to New Orleans. He's likely to give you around 36 minutes if the game's competitive. He's getting usage. He's involved, in terms of assists, so he looks good. No issues with Ingram. I don't mind getting to Jackson Hayes either. He played 30 minutes again last game. But I think Joval and McCollum are the top two for me, and then it's Ingram, Hayes.
Jason says, what point guard's getting the most assists today? If you were to say who has the best odds against the field, it's unquestionably James Harden. I couldn't think of anybody else that would come close in those odds today. Can you?
No.
I don't. A point guard. I can't think of anybody, but all right.
Yeah, I mean, let me see.
I can't think of anyone.
Like Harden's at the top. After that, it's like, I don't know, LaMelo.
I was going to say LaMelo too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Harden's assist prop 10.5 juiced minus 135 on the over. So
can throw Halliburton in there if we're counting him as a point guard, but
yeah, I suppose you could do that. Brogdon back though. I'm saying it's still going to be Harden if you're asking for like the best odds. Who's favored against the field?
Yeah, agreed.
I don't know if there's like a prop out there you're looking to bet or something, but all right, 2 to go. Let's make it happen here. OKC, Denver, and then Portland and Phoenix. 2 games that could be monster blowouts. 9:00 for this Denver game, 10:00 Eastern time for the Phoenix Portland game. So I have a thought here, Adam, and obviously it will be dependent on what value looks like. But something that you and I talk about a lot is like if I'm playing Jokic, it doesn't mean I have to have SGA. But if I'm playing SGA, I would very much like that. Try to get some Nikola Jokic into those lineups, because if this game stays close, anything's possible, right? But the likelihood that with Giddey out, that with Lou Dort out, with everybody out, the likelihood that they stay competitive tonight and it isn't because of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander erupting seems very low.
Yeah, and also if Shai Gilgeous-Alexander pays off a $10,000 price tag, it's hard to think they got blown out.
No, that was my point. I'm saying if they stay competitive, it's only because of SGA. You're right. But also it's hard to believe that Jokic, wouldn't get his 4 quarters in as well.
Right, exactly. Like that's like, and you said it, I don't think, and you don't have to like lock Jokic with SGA.
No.
But
They're
the point being like Jokic can get his in 3 quarters and everybody on OKC sucks. If Shai doesn't suck, chances are this game's competitive. Or I shouldn't even say if he doesn't suck. If he scores like 55 DraftKings points, this game is probably competitive and Jokic is probably getting the full game.
Exactly.
And that also goes, I mean, obviously, it can be difficult to get a 10K Gilgeous-Alexander and Jokic together, but that also goes for, getting full run for guys like Barton and Gordon and Monte Morris.
No doubt.
If Shea has a big game, it is a slight bump, I think, for Denver in general.
I would agree with that entirely. And that's why you're not locking them in together, because if you're paying you're paying 10K for SGA and 12.4 for Jokic, I don't think you want that in every lineup, but it also depends on what type of value opens up throughout the day. The truth is, though, once you get past SGA, you've got guys like Pogoshevsky and Trey Mann. And let me just point out before you go on with this, when I say everyone's out, you have no Aaron Wiggins, and some of these guys aren't good, but they do soak up minutes. No Lou Dort, no Josh Giddey, no Kenrich Williams, no Ty Jerome. All 5 of them are out tonight.
Yeah, it's still a very shorthanded team. Last game, we got Roby in the starting lineup again. Derek Favors didn't play at all. Roby only played 20 minutes. He did deal with some foul trouble. I still don't mind him at 4,400 if he starts. I assume he would get like 24 to 26 minutes. I am interested in Pogoshevsky at 4,100. He got 26 minutes or so last game. There's no guarantee he gets that again, but he does get to play against the god-awful Denver second unit, which is just a great place to be. Plus, he probably would get garbage time, which is not something, typically people say, oh, who's going to play in garbage time? And it's like, who cares? It doesn't matter. When you're talking about somebody like Pogoshevsky, who's in the rotation regardless, and like his normal rotation makes him look like a pretty good play, then it is a little bit of an added bonus where it's like, all right, he probably gets a few extra minutes if this game does get out of hand. So it makes him, maybe look a little bit better. But mostly it's just that he gets to go out there and play against the second unit.
Okay. Is there anybody else that can get additional minutes that you like, or should we talk about Denver here?
No, I think we can go to Denver.
I think one of the points that we make a lot is when you have a Barton at that price and Gordon, all of them seem to be reasonable enough at their price points and ownership that, in a spot like this, if it stays close, they can be fine. But it always comes down to Jokic. I mean, every single day, if this team is healthy, I'm not talking about Jamal Williams and Michael Porter, but the healthy that we've known for the past couple of months, it's usually just Jokic and then everybody else. And that's no different today, in ownership at least.
Yeah. Jokic is just there by himself. Top projected player on the slate. The only guy remotely close is Giannis. If you can get to Jokic, go for it. The only negative on Jokic is, again, that not only is 12,400 a pretty healthy price tag, not saying it's as high as it really should be on Jokic, but it still, affects what else you can do in your lineup. But you're also foregoing, on FanDuel, every other center, on DraftKings, all the other centers except one. So that's the only knock on Jokic, but good spot for him. Does everything offensively. If this game blows out, there's still a very good chance that Jokic was extremely productive while he was on the floor. So I want to get to as much Jokic as I can. Barton, Gordon, Morris, I think are all okay. Nothing special, just pretty much correctly priced.
I bet the under on Jokic points, rebounds, and assists today, under 49.5, and that's a terrifying thing. But here we are.
49.5?
Under 49.5, yeah.
I think I would need like 31, 32 minutes.
Oh, okay. So you got him projected pretty high.
Yeah.
He's gone under that in 8 of his last 10 games too, which is surprising.
Yeah, it is surprising.
Let's wrap it up, man. Portland and Phoenix. This Portland team looked like they had a little fight in them, right? Going up against good teams, getting some wins. And then it just all collapsed. And then you lost Yusuf Nurkic, Justice Winslow's out. Bad team right now, dude. They're huge dogs on the road in Phoenix, even without Chris Paul. Shouldn't make a difference. Everyone's out outside of like Simons and Josh Hart, and they're not going to be able to get it done. You're talking about, besides those guys, Adam, you're looking at Drew Eubanks and Ellaby and Watford and Greg Brown. Like, these are literally the starters and the depth that they have on this team right now. It's awful.
Yeah, very bad team. And like you said, they showed some fights and they started making up foot injuries for their good players.
Hey, you're out 4 weeks. Yeah,
yeah.
You're right.
Your plantar fasciitis that you did not know you had is really acting up. But it does open up some value. I mean, Keon Johnson's $3,100 projected for 33% ownership, played about 26 minutes last game. In his career, he's played 17 total games going back to his time with the Clippers. He's averaged 0.78 DraftKings points per minute. He is someone that I think you can feel relatively confident in playing, not necessarily in his production because, he's played 17 games in his career, but Portland wants to play this guy anyway. Like, he's young. He's someone that potentially plays a future role. He kind of just fits everything they're doing right now. So you can feel pretty comfortable in his minutes. Like, I would expect him to be out there kind of regardless of what the score is. So 3,100 looks pretty good for him. Drew Eubanks at 4,300 looks fine. Again, just another center. Trendon Watford at 3,900 does have power forward eligibility, which is nice, but probably only playing around 20 minutes. Last game, you got 28 for Eubanks, 20 for Watford. Maybe if it's a blowout, that ends up a little bit more even. But can't be too confident in his minutes there. Similarly with Greg Brown, you're probably getting 20 to 22 minutes at 3,800. Makes him okay in tournaments, but nothing I'm too crazy about. The high-end guys, I mean, it's really risky, I think, going to Simons or Hart. They certainly have high ceilings because of how involved they're going to be here, but it's also a brutal matchup, and it's not like they're getting any sort of discounted price tags, really.
I mean, I'm legitimately considering laying 13.5 on.
I don't think that's bad at all.
What?
I would have no issue with that.
No, on the Suns? No. This team is so bad that I just don't. I don't see any way they can keep it even remotely competitive. I'm just saying, that 13.5 is a lot of points, right? But we've got it at, oh, wow. I was looking at our betting tool and we have the expected spread at 16.3. So yeah, I'm on the right page there. Let's do it. What do you think about Phoenix tonight, man? Cameron Payne's probable. That affects Devin Booker a little bit, I think.
Yeah, and it also gives us another value point guard if he starts.
You think he will?
Probably. I don't know. They could, because they could just go Cameron Johnson and then stick with Cameron Payne in his sixth man role. Like, I think one way or the other, he plays more minutes than he would if Chris Paul were in, but I don't necessarily know if he starts.
I kind of just thought, and I'm not sure, of course, but I kind of just thought that instead of, somebody like Aaron Holiday getting the backup point guard minutes, it would be Cameron Payne. But of course, you could just stagger him even if he's in the starting lineup anyway.
Right. I think the point here is, even if Payne comes off the bench, he's probably playing like 22 to 24 minutes. And at 4,300 against Portland, that's going to make him look good. If he starts, then you bump the minute projection and he looks even better. But I like playing Cameron Payne one way or the other. Devin Booker, I think, still looks good. To your point, Cameron Payne is going to have the ball in his hands more when he's on the floor, and that will cut into Booker a little bit. But Booker's still going to get, whatever he wants. So I think Booker still looks good at 9,700, even if it's not quite as good as he otherwise would have. And then DeAndre Ayton still should just destroy Drew Eubanks and Trendon Watford. I mean, Portland doesn't really have a center, or they have Eubanks, but he hardly counts. So another good center, another good mid-range center. Ayton, I think, looks good. Those are the top three guys for me. Then, if you want to mix in some $5,300 Cam Johnson or $6K Mikal Bridges, any of those guys are fine. But Payne, Booker, Ayton in the top three.
All right. Putting you on the spot a little bit here, and we're going to wrap this up. Who would you say are your top tier play, top value play right now has got to be Trey Lyles. I just don't see any way around it. So I won't even ask you that.
Yeah.
But top high end play, and then top play that's not getting the ownership that you think he should. Maybe it is Sabonis, maybe it's somebody else.
Top high end play is Jokic. Top under-owned guy?
Like, I'll throw Sabonis and Harden out there just because I do think there's a possibility that, Giannis doesn't have a great game. Maybe that's your guy. Jokic is involved in a huge blowout. Devin Booker in a huge blowout. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. So I think that makes it a little bit interesting. And while Philly's a bigger favorite, I just find them less likely to blow the Knicks out than I do a team like OKC or Portland to get blown out. As bad as the Knicks are, they're markedly better than both the Blazers and the Thunder.
Yeah. I guess I'll go Sabonis. I was going to say Gobert, but he's projected for like 15% ownership, so it doesn't feel like he counts.
And is Lyles your favorite value right now?
Yeah.
Gotta be, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's Lyles, and then I think the next tier is the Gabe Vincent, Payne, Keon Johnson tier, and then it kind of just becomes, do whatever the hell you want.
Someone mentioned DeMarcus Cousins. It's funny if Cousins was like Trey Lyles' price in this game against OKC, it might actually be really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, so he got the $1,500 price bump, but also he's only a center is the problem. Like,
Yeah,
yes, obviously he can go for 40 or whatever he did in like 14 minutes last game, but it's not like he's ever playing alongside Jokic. And you still have to get it's not a matter when you're talking about centers, especially. It's not a matter of just getting, oh, he's 4,500. We got 22 points. That's good. Like you need actual good
for
games.
sure.
If he were 3K, I think he'd be fine. 4,500 is pretty tough.
It's tough. Yeah. One of my favorite players ever, man. I'm just a huge DeMarcus Cousins
Same.
fan. So glad to see you still balling off the bench, pal. Maybe you'll get some blowout run tonight. Follow Adam at Ship My Money DFS, me at Loughy_D. Appreciate you guys, as always, for hanging out with us. Always a lot of fun. You'll be back on the deeper dive tonight with Alex. Then you got Lie Before Lock. You got the Locks Before Locks. Lock with Ben and Matt Savoca, and then PGA Live Before Lock, 8 p.m. Stick around for that. A whole lot of other stuff going on throughout the day as well, but it's other sponsored content, so I can't say it. At least I don't think I should, but I'll be on one of them. And I got the Odd Shopper props and bets video coming up. Should be out this afternoon. Check it out. Hit me up each and every day over there. We'll see you back here tomorrow on the Strategy Show. Peace.